Hi everyone, I'm Saloni. Wishing you all a very happy Pride Month. Hoping this month brings more happiness and inclusion in our lives. Today we are going to discuss around cultivating inclusion at the workplace. It was June 28, 1969, when a riot broke out in Stonewall in New York City. For the first time, people had taken a stand against the oppressive anti-legal system and the institutions enforcing it. Stonewall changed the trajectory of LGBTQIA+ rights worldwide. In India, the first Pride Parade was held in Calcutta on 2nd of July 1999. There were only 15 participants, none of them were women. Today, it's been more than 20 plus years, and we are having the celebration in more than 21 Indian cities. And this is amazing that we have come so far. Now, uh, there uh, there is a saying that all great people had critics, but they still believe in the beauty of their dreams. They are fully persuaded to stay focused and determined for the realization of their dreams. We are very excited to have Suresh Ramdas with us for leading the discussion. And Suresh is obviously one of the person who has believed in the beauty of their dreams and they have persuaded their dream. So, Suresh is working as the global training lead at HP Incorporations. He is the LGBTQ plus advocate for inclusion in the corporate space. As an out gay man, he is also the winner of Mr. Gay India 2019. He is coming with 14 plus years of total experience in customer support and in space of diversity and inclusion. He is also the co-founder of Working with Pride. Last but not the least, he is also featured with 2019 as 2019's Outstanding 50 LGBT plus Future Leader. We are delighted to have you, Suresh. And before we start this discussion, on our platform, we are covering various life stories as we understand that life story hold the power of impacting many other lives, inspiring many other. So it is a privilege that we have covered your life story, and I would request you to play that life story before we start off the discussion. Suresh, we can't hear the volume of this video. Can you please do some settings?
All right, so let me go ahead and stop sharing and share it again. My apologies.
Yes, we can hear it now. Thank you. is a beautiful story, and it is actually truly inspiring. And this story is actually going to inspire many others.
All right. So thank you so much, Saloni. Once again, thank you so much, Inclusified team, to kind of put this together. I think, I mean, I also kind of really at times choke up, and yeah, when I see this, it's been a journey, but it's great, interesting, and I'm super excited. Happy Pride Month, everybody. As again, Saloni said, my name is Suresh Ramdas. My pronouns are he and his, and I really appreciate everybody joining in at this time, which is again middle of the week. Super excited to go ahead and kick this conversation started. So, with that being said, I quickly wanted to go ahead and ask you all a question. All right. So before we get started, so it's always good to ask questions and make sure everybody's aware. Um, so I'm going to put a question out there. You can use the chat. Is that right, or a poll, Saloni? You're
We
going to
can
be
do a poll for it.
poll. Okay. All right. So quickly, you all need to tell me, is there a difference between gender and sex? So you can start the poll and let's get going. 30 seconds. What is the first thing that comes in your mind? Just go ahead and answer that.
Most of them are saying yes. There are few who are not sure.
That's absolutely fine. Great.
And there are
Go on.
people who are also saying no, there is no difference between gender and sex.
Definitely. We like that. So, okay. So we just crossed 48%. So I
Last
hope
three
we can get
seconds to go.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now sharing the results.
Okay.
62% of our attendees think yes, there is a difference. 8% feel like there is no difference, and 31% are not sure if there is any difference or not.
Perfect. So this is a great opportunity. So it's good, that we have a good mix of people who are not quite sure, and that's absolutely okay because it's not everybody needs to know everything, right? And we are here in this journey for learning, right? So moving on, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you all, yes, there is a difference between gender and sex. All right. So I'm going to show you all a very nice picture, which will probably give you all an understanding of that, right? So what is gender? It is nothing but the social construct of, roles, behaviors, then expressions, identities of how and, people should really behave. So what the picture that you see on the left hand side talks to you about gender, while sex is what you see on the right hand side, which is the biological attributes, your physical features, your chromosomes, your gene expressions, hormones, and anatomy. Right. So quite interesting, right? So gender and sex, not sure. Now at least does that bring a little bit of clarity? If that does, great. So moving on, once we go beyond gender and sex, let's talk about gender, the gender bread, where we will talk a little more in detail about expression, identity, orientation, and what is called as sex, right? I know a lot of them really don't like, let's not talk about sex, but we're not talking about that part of the sex, but this is general conversation, all right? So where on the top you see identity, right, which is the brain. So that is also called gender identity. So it is how a person identifies themselves to be with, right? So as it defines, so what is there in your head, your experience, and your definition of gender, right? And the same goes for expression as to how do you really want to exhibit yourself to the world. So that is definitely called the expression, where it could be with regarding to the way you behave, your clothing, your attire, everything. Presenting yourself to the world is called gender expression. And then you have attraction, right? So wherein you are attracted to either the same sex, opposite sex, and you also have a range. It's a spectrum. So with that being said, you really need to understand, attraction is also romantically and physically. So here, as I said, with regarding to sex, it's about your anatomy, and then you also have differentiations in that. So with that being said, it is never a binary. It's always going to be a spectrum. All right. So there's no black or white. There are shades of gray. That's why I always kind of bring this joke about is that 50 Shades of Grey was a big hit is because of that reason, because there's no black and white. There are always shades of gray. Okay. So with that being said, I just want to go ahead and bring this to another picture here, which talks about your identity, your expression, and your anatomical sex, which is very important for you all to know that yes, you do have male, female, right? But you also have intersex, right? So one in every 1,000 people as a population, you have intersex people, right? It's very important to understand and identify and know that they do exist. And then when we talk about sexual attraction, so that's when you get attracted to the same sex, opposite sex, or you are attracted to both of them. And there is a lot more understanding on that, right? So it is a spectrum. So there's nothing very specific that you have to be attracted to only certain people and not. It's again very inert and very, that comes from inside. The same thing for romantically involved as well. Some people are not at all romantically involved with anybody while they want to be attracted or romantically involved with either of the sex or both of the sex. So you have them as, gays, lesbians, bisexuals. So that's where your spectrum of LGBTQ plus comes into picture. All right. So with that, now that you have an understanding that gender and sex are not the same, and then you also got a little more understanding of the identity, the expression, and the attraction, we go into the aspect of what is a law in India. So with the show of hands or even the chat, y'all can go ahead and type in. How many of y'all know what Section 377 was all about? Quickly, 30 seconds. Yeah, do you all know what it is about or no? That's absolutely fine. Be honest
One
here.
attendee has raised his hand.
Okay,
We have count of two now.
all right.
Okay, five.
5.
Most of them, yeah. We have 8 people who are raising their hands. 9.
All right, good. So for the rest of the folks who do not want to answer, I'll walk you all through. So Section 377, which was one which was very, very important, for the LGBT community to be removed on September 6, 2018. But what does it actually mean? It really talks about voluntarily having carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man, woman, or animal shall be punished with imprisonment for life or with imprisonment of either a description of a term which may extend to 10 years and shall be liable to fine. So anything in a very compressed form, anything which is non-procreative. That means to say, if you're not having sex for the reason of procreation, that is to have, your future generations coming to picture, that is against the order of nature, right? So that is what Section 377 is all about. And a lot of organizations were hiding behind this specific law, saying that, oh my God, we have Section 377, so we cannot really talk about LGBTQ rights or issues or concerns at workplace, right? But actually, to be honest, not anybody comes to work to have sex, right? Let's be honest on that. They all come to work. So, now that we have Section 377 gone off, now we really need to start working on the conversation of inclusion at workplace for the LGBTQ community people. But with Section 377 going away, I just wanted to walk you all through a little bit of a history as to, the struggles that we've gone through on a very, very high level perspective. Right. So in 1861, Section 377 was otherwise called the Buggery Act, right, which again got reformed and it kind of got changed. So it criminalizes sexual activities against the order of nature. And fast forward 2009 is when the Delhi High Court went ahead and decriminalized homosexuality and scrapped Section 377. In between, also there are a lot of work that has been done. I do not want to, not acknowledge the work that has been done by the NAS Foundation, a lot of NGOs, who have gone ahead and taken this step forward to bring it to the Supreme Court and various other people to talk about the LGBT community. Moving on, 2013, the bad aspect, in 4 years, whatever Delhi High Court did, the Supreme Court went ahead and reversed the judgment and put a lot of people back into the closet who cannot go back. And the ones who wanted to come out, again, they're stuck. Right, so 2014 came in a great landmark judgment, which recognized the transgender community, and that's when you have male, female, or other being put into all your government IDs and documentation and all of that, which was very, very important. And then in 2017, right to privacy was declared a fundamental right. And this kind of really took the conversation forward for the people who are fighting for the removal of Section 377. This was one of the key and the most important process, or something that they could hold back or hold on to, saying that now that we have right to privacy, you really can't talk about what do we do in the four walls. So with that being said, 2018, September 6th, which I love to call as, the Indian LGBTQ Independence Day, or to kind of keep everybody in the same bucket, LGBTQ Day, right? So this was our Independence Day, September 6th, 2018. It was a joyous moment where Supreme Court went ahead and legalized homosexuality, and there was a huge uproar of the way the Supreme Court judgment really came out. Till date, this is one of the best judgments in the world. Nothing has come close to it. And some of the Asian countries, again, which were colonized by the Britishers, now they are looking at the Supreme Court of India's verdict and trying to go ahead and make changes in their own countries. So it was a landmark, and I'm for sure you can see a lot of quotes, by the Chief Justice on what and all they have said about the community in a very, very empathetic, and they apologize, and they also said a lot of work has to be done, which was great. And then comes 2019, where the Transgender Persons Act came across, which is again protection of rights for the trans community. Not so very great judgment or the act that has come up, because there's a lot of conversations or a lot of loopholes which still need to be fixed in order to identify who's a trans person, how does that get identified, and all of that. So there is still an ongoing battle, and conversations are happening on this, but on a very high level, this is what has been happening in India right from the time the Britishers came in. Right. So I always tell people, yeah, India was a very diverse country before Britishers came in. Yes, there were a lot of other issues, but we were very inclusive and diverse. Right. Britishers came in and they messed it up. So wherever they went and conquered, they have messed it up, right? But then they decided to go fix it back in their country and let everybody else, be on their own or fix it themselves. So that is a struggle, and that's an issue. But with that being said, long way to go, but we are making amazing progress. So with that, now that you'll know, what again LGBTQ people are all about, what is the law in India. Now, the main crux of this particular webinar is about inclusion in a workplace, right? So, what is the need for us to be inclusive of LGBTQ people? Let me talk about the business case. Firstly, before, yes, Section 377 was there, people said, oh, no, we don't need to go ahead and talk about this community. Let's not talk culturally. I think it's a Western identity. It is not something that we should, really propagate and talk about. It's a private thing, right? But it is important because of the simple fact that heterosexuality is also being shown day in and day out by people, whether you like it or not, or whether you know it or not. Putting your partners or your wives or your husband's picture, marriage invitations at work. You invite people for your marriages. You have pictures of your kids at your desk, right? So this is celebrating heterosexuality. But then at the same time, you say that I cannot talk about, as a lesbian, I cannot talk about my partner. As a trans person, I cannot reveal my identity. If I'm bisexual, I cannot say certain things. If I'm gay, I cannot put a picture of my partner, right? So this is, I think, a very important saying by um, Mark Kaplan, a president of Dagoba Group, clearly says, and I read it: LGBTQ plus inclusion in the workplace is not about people's sexual lives. It is instead about their identity and the extent to which they will be included if they are open about themselves in the same way heterosexuals are, right? So please get this. So as heterosexuals, you all are, out there talking about your personal lives and all of that, while we from the community people are really not there. And that really takes into a lot of the other conversations. But again, as I said, after Section 377 getting removed, this has become even more prominent. A lot of them are coming out, right? But also at the workplace, they want to be more inclusive. So this is when the conversation really gets in. And I will talk about, what, again, going back to the business case, what are some of those key points that you'll really need to look at? And for sure, we need ROI, we need, the business value as to why we really need to invest in them. So the first one is employer of the choice, right? As people from the community, so I have 4 pointers which I'm going to talk about here, and those are, again, employer of the choice. So by default, a lot of people understand that creating a diverse and inclusive workplace has been, you know, have conversations are there around this. You can see that in the West, where there's a lot of focus happening in diversity and inclusion, which is also called IND or DNI, right? And they have been proven to be a key differentiator when it comes to positioning your company as an employer of choice. And then you also have, I'm sorry, the next point is productivity and performance, right? This is something, again, which really takes into picture if you're in the closet or if you create a space which is very inclusive. How does your productivity and performance really improve? Competitive advantage, how can you get better? Because we are always looking at being ahead, being the number one in the market, making sure that we are well branded and all of that. So how do we really talk about the competitive advantage? And lastly, risk and reputation, which is one of the key ingredients now with the fact that we are in social media. We talk about our conversations in the internet, and the media really takes it forward in various forms, social media, and all of that. So we really need to take care of a brand and make sure that we don't get into the wrong side of the news, which will really hamper our brand and reputation, right? So to go into a little bit more about the employer of choice, as I said, there are some statistics that I'm going to be throwing here. 72%, this is again global statistics, all right? So 72% of the non-LGBTQ plus individuals prefer to work for an inclusive company. And I will tell you all the details of where I got the stats from in the end, but it's very important for you all to understand that 72% of the non-queer or LGBTQ people are looking for inclusive companies. Because if you make it inclusive for the community, then everybody else gets inclusive, irrespective of who they are, right? Because if you go back, if you remember the slides of gender, sex, and then you also have the conversations around expression, gender identity, they can really be who they want to be. Here, next one, 87% of the population or the people are more likely to accept a job at a company that is supportive of the LGBTQ community. 87%. That's a huge, right? To be the employer of the choice, to kind of make sure that you are doing the best. You want to go ahead and have the best. So these are the people who really look forward for that. And then 65% of the population or the people consider diversity practices or policies as a major factor before they join an organization. 65%. So a lot of the young crowd, the millennials mostly who are in, always look at ways and how they are going to be included, inclusive, because they're learning a lot more and they're far more ahead. So they're going to be looking at some of these key things. Can I be myself at work? If I cannot be myself, then I don't want to be in that organization. And LGBTQ people are more so wanting that sort of acceptance and inclusion so that they can be their true and authentic self, right? So let me just check. Do y'all have any questions? Saloni, just let me know, if I have to take
We
any questions.
have one question. So, how much it is advised to come out at workplace?
How much is it advised? Okay, all right. I would always tell you all, for people who are from the community and not out, and for the allies as well, um, to really be supportive, I think find out if your workplace is inclusive and look at your environment. I hope your colleagues, managers are not homophobic or throwing homophobic jokes around, so then you may feel that it may not be the right time. But then you also need to understand, are your HR folks also equally homophobic, or they are not? If they're not, then can you have the conversation? You really don't need to put yourself out there, but you can always turn around and say, hey, you know what? I don't think so. This is the right thing to do, because knowing that in India and across the globe, we are a population of around 10 to 12% roughly. So do the math. 1.35 billion people, and 12% of that on a global statistics is from the LGBTQ plus community. So that is the number of people who are there from the community. So they are going to be there. You think that they're not there in the organization, they're very much there. And they're all closeted because of the environment that they are in. So check your environment, and if you are willing to take that extra effort of being a little more strong and ready to face some challenges, then go for it. And if you can bring that change, nothing like it, nothing like it, right? But again, think about it. Also have a good support system back home or with your friends. You need to have certain counselors. You need to make sure that your mental health is also in place, because I know coming out is not an easy thing, and you need a lot of help in the form of friends, counselors, and all of that. So have all of that in place and then decide to go and take the plunge. It's not an easy battle, or it's not an easy walk. It's going to be difficult, but it's worth it if you really think about it. And if you feel um, you are going to do it, then do it. All right. So with that, let me continue again with the employer of the choice, where I know a lot of organizations want their companies to be the best, right? So these are some of the things. And you also need to keep in mind the fact that millennials are one of the biggest population in India, and they are wanting to go ahead and be in the right organization, which is very accepting and very adapting, right? The youngsters these days want things and they want it better. They are looking for something new all the time. So with that being said, our organizations also trying to be more inclusive of other things, right? So which is in these aspects as well. So moving on, you also have on productivity and performance, wherein a lot of these companies do talk about the fact that some statistics I'm going to throw around, wherein 28% of the people lie about their personal lives who are from the community. You have 25% of the people who avoid certain people at work. So this again comes into picture. You know, if they throw homophobic jokes or slurs, joke around, or even certain sexist comments also can trigger that whole conversation around not wanting to be themselves. 20% of them avoid a special event at work for the simple fact is this is something very common. Team gatherings, bring your family, bring your wife, bring your kids. But what about people from the community? We don't have a family. We don't have, uh, uh, there's no marriage legalized, so we can't bring our wife or husband. And there's no conversation around partners, definitely no kids, right? So a lot of them avoid going in for some of these special events and cases. Lastly, 20% of them report staying home from work. People from the community love to work from home if given an opportunity, because they really don't want to be in a space which is very homophobic. If they're at home or if they're in a PG or staying by themselves, they can be their true self there. And then all this, if a person is looking at all these, I mean, on a very roughly, 20, close to 30% of the population of the community are not being their true self, how does that really impact your productivity and performance? It does drastically, because this is one of the key ingredients. I was in the closet for quite a while at my organization, and my productivity was dipping, no doubt. But I had to put 200% more and give 200% more so that I can cover all the other issues. I was always concerned who's trying to talk behind my back. Are they saying something about my clothing? Are they saying something about the way I talk, the way I walk, the way I gesture using my hands? So my mind was more focused on that because I was in the closet and I was not sure how people are going to react. So a lot of energy goes into that. When you focus a lot of your energy on these things, but when you come to work, you need to be more focused on work. If it's not happening, then you're going to lag on that. And to cover up, you're going to go extra, you're going to work extra hours, and it's not a healthy thing, right? So a lot of people really have that difficulty. And this is again a very India specific metric, or I mean, I wouldn't say metric, but a study that happened where only 28% of the population who are from the LGBT community are out to the managers. And then you have 25% of them are out to the colleagues. So with just a quarter of the population who are from the LGBT community are either they're out. So you can imagine the rest 75% or 70 plus percent are still in the closet struggling, and you can see the productivity and performance lags. So what does this mean in regards to productivity and performance again? So if the environment is not very good, a lot of them are going to take sick leaves. They are not going to be performing to their best in places where ideation has to happen. Creativity is never there. Why? Because they're always frustrated about what is happening in and around. They will not be able to give their best. So it's a business case to improve and to really hone their creativity skills doesn't come out when the environment is really not conducive. So with that, the second business case is on productivity and performance, while third is competitive advantage. Simple thing in regards to this, we want to be the best. We want to be ahead of everybody, right? And as I said, with the population of around 1.35 billion, 12% of that, you can imagine the kind of money that we have, right? You'll need to really think about, you cannot miss out on the opportunity of investing in the LGBT community. We earn like everybody else, like a heteronormative person or a heterosexual, but we, most of them, majority, I would not say a minority or thing, but most of them go ahead and have a lot of money to spend, right? We don't go ahead and invest, or we don't have kids. So the kids' education and the kids' growing up years, all of that is really not taken, being looked into. And, houses, maybe some of them want to invest, some of them don't really have. We have the power, which is called the pink economy or the pink money, right? So we have a lot. So can we go ahead and create an opportunity and create a market for them? Right? So, which again starts from the workplace. So, if you can be more inclusive, then the conversations are going to be that, yes, we're going to be talking about all of this to everybody else as what a great organization is. So, whatever you are working on or whatever products you're kind of really rolling out, if it's again LGBTQ plus inclusive, it's going to be great. So here again, a statistic is that 71% of the population, are most likely to purchase from companies that support LGBTQ plus people. So during Pride Month, if you have something about pride, rainbow, but really talk about it, walk the talk of being inclusive, they will be very, very supportive. They will purchase that no matter what because they know that this company or this organization is very, very inclusive. So again, think of I would always call it the pink money, pink dollar, pink rupees, whatever it is. I do joke that, the new notes that have come out are also somewhat in
Yeah.
the rainbow colors. So I always say, yeah, I think they're kind of realizing it in their own way, but you're just not accepting it. So, but I mean, yeah, jokes apart, but yeah, it is. You'll really need to think of investing in us and really taking it forward. For the simple fact is because we are a $5 trillion opportunity. So this is again globally, do the math again, global population versus the population that we have in India, $5 trillion market. That's huge, and a lot of them are missing out on tapping on this opportunity. Create products which are LGBTQ friendly or which are pro LGBTQ. Go ahead, we will be your biggest fans, and we will start supporting and buying your products, and you will be in the long run, yes, you're going to be much ahead than organizations which are not inclusive. And you all can see that in the work that is being done. Pride Month, which is again very specific to US, but we kind of celebrate that globally. You can see the kind of products that are coming out during Pride Month, and they do that all year through, talking about how inclusive they are and how great they are, right? So moving on again, reputation and risk, which is again, as I said, we need to make sure that the companies take less risks and manage reputation by doing the right thing. You don't get into some of the wrong news. Like I don't know if how many of you all have heard about the metro rail, which was greatly lauded for the fact that they included the trans community, but then also they got a big backlash is when they really didn't create that environment for them. They said all the trans community come and work here, but then to come and work in that place they have to travel hours and hours. But when they have to move to that specific nearby your work location, if it is not inclusive, a lot of them dropped off, right? So it was lauded for one point, but also it was really been it took the beating for not really thinking about the community far more, right? And then there were a couple of other organizations where they didn't have the right policies in place or the right behavior. So when people left, it became a huge news that this organization really didn't go ahead and support me. There were homophobic slurs, and the HR person itself really didn't know how to talk to me. And they said, "Oh, you're gay, so how can you be that?" and all of that. So when it comes out, it really puts a wrong image, and it is again not the right thing, because we are a small community, which is again we are networked in a very different way, right? So we network ourselves quite closely, and we get to know that. And once they get to know, then nobody's really going to be there, right? So make sure that you do the right thing and get all that information and knowledge that is available.
Okay. We have one attendee. She's asking about, is there any Indian brand which is supporting LGBTQ plus?
Sorry, any what?
Any Indian brand which is supporting LGBTQ plus?
We have a lot of companies per se which are being LGBTQ plus inclusive. Local brands again. See, September 6, 2018. I would say, let's say September 7th. Between 6th and 10th, a lot of companies really put rainbow flags on their logos or came up with amazing, posters supporting the LGBTQ plus community. It's a great way to start, but then at the same time, are you really walking the talk?
Yeah,
Right?
right.
Just don't do it for the sake of doing it.
Mhm.
But I think there are certain organizations, multinational companies, which have started their journey in inclusion. Brands, I would say Mintra is also inclusive. Jabong was, if you'll have seen the Jabong ad, which came, I think, almost 3 years ago. was very inclusive. And um, Indian brands, yeah, Swiggy is also one of them. They are walking the talk as well. So we do have certain brands. It's not that there aren't any. Uh, there are companies. There are quite a few companies which are doing great work, in LGBTQ plus inclusion.
Yeah. Recently, we had one more commercial of Close Up. So
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
of Apurva Asrani and Siddhant.
yes,
So
yes.
they are showing their story, their beautiful story. So I think these are the brands which are stepping ahead in inclusions.
Yeah. I mean, there are some more, see, if we can say even Wix also, if you've seen some of these ads. But the only problem is that they don't go full out. They're pretty much, in the online territory, like social media, like Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, but it really doesn't come out in the regular television sets. Right. So that is where I think the biggest impact is going to be. Once these kind of advertisements, which are there, if they can take that leap of faith and really push and drive that conversation, you can see it's going to reach everybody. Television set is in everybody's house. Everybody has dish, cable connections, most of them at least. So then the reach is going to be really there. But I think, yes, the conversation has to get going. There has to be that extra push. They need to know. Moment we see anything which is pride color, the community people always run towards it. Let it be anywhere in the world, and we identify ourselves through that. So people really need to understand and get that logic. Yeah.
Right. And there are streaming apps like Netflix and Prime which are taking the lead here. So there are many LGBTQ plus focused movies, series which are they are publishing now.
True. I think ever since the really, I mean, ever since the strike down of Section 377, there has been a lot of conversations. I think media plays a very, very important role in driving this and setting out the right conversation context around it. See, they're going to vary from good, bad, ugly, all possible combinations of highlighting the LGBTQ plus community. But I think we need to know that we are there. We are very much there in the community. We just want to have that acceptance and take it forward from there. So this is another stats which kind of the World Bank has come up with. India's loss in GDP to homophobia in 2016. I know that's quite a long time back, even before the Section 377 getting removed, but an estimate 32 billion or 1.7% of the country's GDP gets lost because of homophobia. And I'm not quite sure if that is, changed much. 32 billion, maybe say 30 billion or even 28 billion. But there is this huge gap, right? Because of homophobia. And this is something that, as I said, the World Bank has really put that together. So money is getting lost because y'all are not being inclusive and y'all are not tapping on the community's, pink money. So you have your business case here, right here with all this information about, being the brand employer, competitive advantage, the performance, and putting in the reputation and the risk that is being involved, right? So, any questions before I move into the next? Do you all have anything?
Um, so there is someone who's asking how does coming out at workplace helps employees and employers?
Great question. How, I mean, the fact is, coming out really makes you be your authentic self, right? First and foremost, again, I'm going to go back to my story of after me coming out. I was never bothered about what people are going to really think about me. I was able to focus myself, and my trajectory in my work life really went upward ever since I've come out, right? Because I was not bothered about what people are thinking about me. I was able to give 100% of my attention focus towards work, be it in any form, being it in learning, development, gradually interacting with other people, because for me, the intent was to give my best to the work that I was doing. So coming out again, you're going to be relaxed, you're going to be comfortable in your own skin, right? You don't have to have any of those other botherations. Like any other straight person, You can just talk about your partner if you have one, or your how your weekend was. A lot of people from the community always have these issues of this question. We really don't like if you're in the closet, or if the workplace is not inclusive. We dread that Monday, because people are going to ask you, hey, how was your weekend, what did you do? And we always have to resort to telling lies if you're not if you're in the closet. But if you're out of the closet, you can always say, yes, I partied, I went to a party with my friends. And or if you have a partner, I was pretty much chilling out with my partner. Yes, we did have certain the regular relationship issues, all of that. So it becomes a very normalized conversation, and you don't need to hide anything. You can be your true, honest, authentic self. And that reflects a lot in all aspects of your work, your relationship, and the excitement that you have, because you're not holding anything back. And that, I mean, that is something that I have learned personally, and that has really helped me a lot. And yeah, it is good, but at the same time, at your own pace. Don't get bogged down by the fact that, oh, since everybody's coming out, even I need to come out. No, it is a personal journey, and only when you know that you want to come out or you want to tell people, that's fine. So you need to do that. So yeah. So with that being said, now that you'll have a business case, how can you really put that to use, right? So, or what are the couple of steps that you all can do, which is going to help you all to do that? So here I've come up with certain recommendations that you can say, right? Strategy and leadership accountability. In any organization, I think being inclusive starts from leadership, and it also comes in from a fact that there has to be a strategy for being inclusive. So make sure that your organization has a clear strategy with business goals, stated business goals for promoting LGBTQ plus inclusion. You really need to do that. The leaders have to walk the talk. You just can't go out and say, all right, let's be inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community. As leaders, take ownership, take accountability, drive conversations. If it's a top down conversation that's happening, you'll need to have the conversation out there. And I always tell leaders should take accountability and should drive the conversation initially, which also involves in bringing in the culture. It's a culture change, which also have one of the steps as diversity culture, which is very important. So accountability, leadership, strategy has to be there. If not, then nothing is going to go forward. No matter how bottom up approach if you all have on this, if the leaders are not in, then it's not going to be easy, right? So the heart, mind, the soul, everybody has to be involved. Next, uh, you have policies and guidelines along with benefits. Policies and guidelines. Again, once you have the strategy in place with the leadership buy-in, great. Next is policies and guidelines, right? So what is policies and guidelines all about? Making sure your policies are all gender neutral. They're not very gender specific, saying that I know we have POSH, which is very women oriented, but then that's the government of India's rule or the law that has been set across. But in your workspaces, you need to make sure policies are very gender neutral. That is very, very important. Review to all your policies, look at your practices, and are they kind of going only towards a specific gender? Now, if it is, then you need to come back together as a team and really revisit all those, and even certain basic things about the language that you all use. Uh, do you all be inclusive of everybody? Using inclusive languages in your policies and guidelines also sets a different tone. So for me, instead of saying he, she, you can always say the employees, our employees, when you're addressing people, when the leader's addressing as well, or when you write down your guidelines, make sure it's all gender neutral. And also have equal opportunities and anti-discrimination policies within your organization. and be very clear, and if required, put in LGBTQ people as well. It really calls out, because when employees read it, that means they know that the organization is taking that extra effort to recognize the LGBTQ plus people and drive action accordingly. It's all about recognition and giving that visibility to the community. So if you say, in places like, you always talk about, safety for women or persons with disability, call out even for LGBTQ plus people. We are, making sure there is no discrimination against, you always say gender, ethnicity, caste, creed. Put in sexual orientation as well there. That's absolutely fine. So these are some of the things that you really need to look at. And then, also making sure that, your discrimination policies against bullying, harassment. As I said, POSH is there. You need to make sure that they are all gender neutral, and try and look at the trans communities' gender guidelines, wherein if they want to transition, you're very inclusive in that. And that comes into the next step of benefits. What kind of benefits do you really offer to your employees? Now, if anybody in the organization who's working wants to transition, right? So, do you have some sort of policies around it, guidelines around it? Do you make managers get sensitized, around this conversation? And do you help your employees in the form of benefits to transition? Right. So those are some of the key things that you all need to look at. The other things on benefits, your medical insurance, which is a big struggle right now. We cannot really put, or our partners into that, even with regarding to your life insurance policies. Really not there. Can you put that out there, because that really really helps the LGBTQ plus people who have partners. And this also opens up doors to people who do not believe in marriages, even for the straight community. Now, people who don't get married, who are in live in relationships, now they also suffer because they are not able to have somebody as their backup or help somebody put their name out there, who are their partners. So this helps them as well. So clearly stating it is very important. Again, as I said, coverage is really important around medical insurance, benefits, and proactively and clearly communicate these benefits, not just having it there, doing it at the back end and not communicating. So that is really not helping you all out, right? So you'll need to communicate to the larger audience, telling them that, yes, we have these policies, we have these guidelines, we have these benefits, which are very LGBTQ plus inclusive, for them. So keep that in mind, and come up with your rules. Third, diversity, structure, and measurement. So this is where I was talking about the strategy and accountability from the leaders, where it is a culture, right? It's a culture shift. Can we start having these conversations on a daily basis or on a weekly basis? On your calls, can you all bring up this conversation of being inclusive? Use inclusive language, the usage of pronouns. I know a lot of them always have this conversation. Why do we need to talk about pronouns, right? So I identify myself as a gay man, right? Cisgendered person. So I like to say he, his, right? A woman would like to say she, hers. Again, we need to make sure we give that opportunity for people to talk how they want to be addressed. Imagine every time somebody addresses you incorrectly, how frustrating that is going to be, right?
Right.
So being inclusive of everybody is what we really want to drive that culture, right? An organization which is inclusive, making sure that we talk about how you want to be addressed. Or you can ask people, how would you want to be addressed? A lot of times use their names. But when you need to address them as a third person, how are you going to do that? You need to put that right context there. So which is again bringing in the diversity culture, where we need to talk about conducting events on a regular basis, being part of some of these LGBTQ plus events if your organization wants to be a part of it, or bring that event into your organization and bring awareness, which brings to the next point about corporate culture and training, awareness, a lot of awareness. So all you people who have come in today to this session also talks about the fact that you all want to really bring a change in your organization, want to be inclusive, or want to find ways in being inclusive. So it starts with awareness, learning. Be like a sponge. I always like telling people that, if you're like a sponge, you go soak in as much information as possible and take the right decision. Leaders need to do that. Get information of a lot of things, and then you will be able to have a understanding of the issue. You have diverse people in your organization, which talks about the fact that even in your leadership roles, you need to have people who are women. All the minority community people need to be there, people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus people. Imagine you having this diverse talent and in your leadership role. Look at the kind of conversations, look at the kind of products, the policies, everything that's going to get rolled out. You can see that in organizations which are very male dominated, you can see the kind of products they come up with. And imagine if there are women coming in, then the whole structure changes, the conversation changes. And then when you bring in a person with disability into that, then again the conversation changes into much better, right? Then you bring in people who are from the LGBTQ plus community, a different perspectives. You're not going to get bogged down only by one perspective. You have these many opportunities, these many touch points and ideas. All ideas are great. Everybody has, ideas, but they all tend to be a certain form. It's all male, all men, kind of think alike. When you bring in women, there's a different conversation. Even the way you address people, the environment changes completely. All of this comes into your corporate culture and training. So keep in as much awareness as possible and make sure that you know take the next steps forward. So this is what I had as part of next steps, and these are some of the references that I've gone in for. Majority of the conversations or the talking points have come out from community businesses, LGBTQ plus workplace inclusion in India, which is the definite guide. They're an amazing organization in India doing great work in the DNI form, and a lot of other context in regards to Harvard Business Review, Mingle, the climate study, where I spoke about, very India-specific percentages, your human rights campaign, PwC, and, LGBTQ plus inclusion report that came out. So all this information is from these references. I really need to call it out because I hope it's been a very productive and informative, session. So all this thanks to them. And lastly, I would like to kind of say this: discover, embrace, and be you. Very, very important. Firstly, discover yourself, discover your surroundings, your environment, embrace it. Change is there. Change at times is not easy, but change is the only constant. Keep evolving, keep making sure that you learn. So that's about discover and embrace. Be a sponge. Soak up as much as possible, but also know how to squeeze all the information out so that you don't get, having that same information, because things are changing, people are evolving, everything is changing. So go ahead and be you.
Thank
Very,
you,
very,
Suresh. Thank you
yeah,
for sharing all this information and insights with us. And I think that the best part of these sessions are we are initiating a discussion.
yeah,
So there are people who are going to get encouraged, who will, that is going to help them in coming out. There are
yeah,
people who will get motivated for becoming an LA, and there would be people who would be more open for everyone.
true. Yeah,
So now we are running short on time.
I
So
know.
we
Sorry.
would be, no worries. So we would be taking only last question.
Yeah,
So we have one of our attendees is asking is flip side of desiring an inclusive organization is many older workers are comfortable in a non-inclusive environment, but they are having more seniority experience than millennials. So how do you do the delicate dance that is not offend them as well as please younger employees?
uh, See, I think flip side, I mean, there's no flip side. I think for a simple fact is even the older generation, if I may say so, I'm not offending anybody here, just to be clear. People who of the older generation, again, yes, they have a certain mindset, they have a certain thought process and all of that. But from when you're looking at it from an organization perspective, change is always happening, right? For situations like COVID coming into picture as a pandemic, we really don't know how to deal with this, right? If you are in a set mindset and saying that no, we will do ABC things, while you need to be very innovative, then you're getting lost and you're losing the opportunity of being the best in the market. So going back to the business case again, a lot of those things get covered up when you are not willing to change. Organizations change, and you can see all organizations who have not changed are no more there in the market. So you all decide what is the right fit for the organization. Yes, there is going to be, I mean, it's going to take time. Don't expect things because you all did a training today or a couple of awareness. Things are going to change in next 6 months. It will take at least a couple of years. You always give yourself like 3 to 4 years, in regards to your organization to change. And for that to change, you'll need to have regular intervals of conversations, and you need to bring up the opportunity of saying that it's okay to make mistakes and we will be there to correct you and correct yourself. The I would always go back to this theory. I'm not theory, but how do I say, it's called the growth mindset, which is again a process. Either you are in the growth mindset or a fixed mindset, right? The same thing comes in. A lot of them, if you say the older generation, the fixed mindset, then there is no opportunity to change. So then you all need to take a call as an organization. What is it that you all need to do? Because if millennials are coming in, they're going to come up with ideas. They're going to come up with you know great opportunities, but then also knowing the fact that millennials are going to say that if I'm not encouraged or if I'm not being supported in this organization, I will leave and I will go to an organization which accepts me for who I am, accepts my ideas, and helps others as well. So think about it. And yes, it is going to, yeah, at times people say that it's walking on that you know tight rope here, but you'll need to take that and let people know how to go about bringing that change.
Thank you for addressing all the questions, Suresh. It was an
Yes.
amazing session, and we hope that we have more inclusion happening in the workplace in the forthcoming years.
Yes, thank you so much. And just lastly, before we finish, I just wanted to quickly give a shout out to this NGO called Sangama, which I really support, and they're working on grassroots level issues. They're based out in Karnataka, and they've been one of the oldest NGOs running in for the LGBT community. Right now, they're working a lot, for the trans community, especially due to COVID. So, would love for you all to go ahead and make any donation of your choice. Go ahead, help somebody, and support the community. That is one way of, I would kind of twist it out here and say that's one way of starting to be an ally, is go ahead and support the LGBTQ plus community there. So thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you
Saloni.
for sharing this, and thanking all the attendees for their valuable time and for their active participation. We are glad to hear that you guys have really enjoyed this session. At Inclusify.io, we are celebrating the Pride Month with our campaign of hashtag Our Pride. So we are coming up with back-to-back webinars on Wednesday, and on Friday we'll be having Insta Live session with the role models who are coming from LGBTQ plus community, and we are also having interesting competitions going on Dare to Compete platform. So stay tuned with us, follow us on our social media handles, and we are going to bring much more exciting discussions and challenges, competitions, everything with you guys. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
Suresh.
Thank
Bye.
you.